What's up, guys? It's Toad. All right, here we go. Better. Back with you yet again. We got a bunch of sports on tap here. I'm going to try to get these done quickly. I'm going to try to not repeat myself as much. Let's see if I can get through this. I'm going to have 2 college basketball plays and 1 hockey play today, and skipping NBA and football. It's not one of the days. I forget. What do you call those days where you have every major sport being played at one time? Because we did have that once during the World Series with MLB, NFL. I think it was a Monday night, and NBA and NHL were all played. I forget what you call that, but there was one day where all 4 of those are being played. But we're done with the MLB, so let's get into it. Well, I should say last night I went 3-0. A nice sweep of the board, baby. I'm hot right now, 3-0. Every win at least looked easy on the scoreboard, so although Detroit Red Wings, I mean, they did not play a physical game. So that game, and there was an empty net there. They won, but that game, the final score wasn't totally indicative of what happened in that game, although they still won. And then Northern Illinois capitalized on a couple of turnovers and pulled away later, although I don't think they ever trailed in the game. Maybe they trailed very early, but it seemed like they were always up like 7 throughout the game. Then they finally pushed the lead a little bit further and won that one as well. So, and Cal State Northridge was basically no sweat to kick off the basketball season. So, I mean, I'm happy with it, obviously. That's you can't have a better day than that, really. So, with the way that I do things, let's get into it. We'll jump right into college basketball here. I have 2 plays on this college basketball slate here. I know I'm diving deep again. I'm dumpster diving in college basketball again. I don't even think the rest of these games are even worth talking about, but I found 2 spots here that I'm going. Text it. What's up, man? Oh, the Sports Equinox. Yeah, that is what it's called. Yeah. Equinox, yeah, that's a gym around here, by the way, where like Marky Mark goes to it, Mark Wahlberg. I've been in there before, and you feel like you're totally out of your league. Equinox is like the most expensive gym like in this area, and everybody, it's all like extremely muscular men, and I'm just looking and I'm like, what the hell? Like, I don't belong here. All right. College basketball, first play up. Let's do this right away. Charleston Southern plus 6.5 is the first one up. You might think I'm off my rocker, but you'll see why. I think this is the better of these 2 plays. You'll see why. Actually, it's up to 7 now, so this line keeps going up. I don't know what is going on with this line. Hell, take 7. I haven't played this one yet, although I'm about to. But let's, we'll change it to 7 then. Or you might even get up higher than 7. 7.5 would be even better. This is a play against North Florida. I think North Florida is in a sandwich spot. Double checking with KenPom. I think KenPom has this number being around 4. So we're getting a little bit of line value according to him, but also, like I said, the situation, this calls for a play against North Florida, man. Let's look what's going on with North Florida here. If I can even find it. There it is. The North Florida Ospreys. Yeah, great. They're coming off a huge win, dude. They just went into South Carolina, and they beat an SEC team to kick off the season on the road. So that puts them immediately in a letdown spot, but not only a letdown spot, even though, yes, I know this is their home opener, but it's your home opener. It's against a lesser conference team. You're in the A-Sun, which isn't the greatest conference, but you're playing up against a Big South team. Like, are you really going to be focused on Charleston Southern, where you just beat Charleston Southern's big brother, South Carolina? And look who they have up next. Georgia Tech, an ACC team, and then they have Georgia up right after that. And that's in 3 days from now, and then a couple days after that. This is a packed schedule for North Florida, man. This is sandwiched in between all bigger conference opponents, SEC and ACC teams here. So I think this is a bad spot. Huge upset over South Carolina. They were 19.5-point underdogs on the road, and South Carolina, I think, probably took them lightly. And somehow North Florida came in and won this game. And statistically, it doesn't even look like it was misleading in any way, really. It was a close game, and North Florida won the game. But after that, I think North Florida, is going to be in a letdown spot after that, man. And then on the other side, Charleston Southern. It looks like you can get 7.5 now on this, so let's do that. Oh, I looked at the wrong team. Charleston Southern, they're 0-1 to start the season, and they lost to Clemson. I mean, that is a step-up game as well, but as expected, they got blown out by Clemson, so there's not really much that you can really gain from this. Although Clemson shot 52.4% from 3. Charleston Southern had 18 turnovers, so probably that's not going to be the case again as they step down in class here. I mean, yes, both teams are stepping down in class, but you got one team in a huge letdown spot and one team still looking for their first win and having a game that maybe looked a little bit worse than it actually was. They were 22.5-point dogs in this one. So, I mean, the game basically went as expected. So Charleston Southern is going to be the play there with North Florida in a letdown spot. Let me update this because it's going to be at least +7, maybe 7.5 on this. So Charleston Southern, yeah, +7. 7 is a key number in basketball because it's when you get to that 3-score threshold, so teams stop intentionally fouling as well. And the other game I'm on is Idaho +4. So this one is a little bit similar in a way. Idaho is hosting UC Davis, and it looks like UC Davis is dropping from 4.5 to 4. Ken Palm, I think, has this line at around 3. I believe this is a bad spot for UC Davis, in my opinion. So I know I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but I think this is the top of the barrel as far as the spots are concerned. Like, these are the two spots that really jumped out at me. UC Davis is coming off a big game, man, and this is their second straight road game. They played Washington to open the season, and that was 2 days ago. So it's 2 road games in a row in 2 days, and they played Washington pretty tough, dude, and that's a big game. You're going to a now, I guess, Big Ten Washington team now, who was formerly in the Pac-12. Pretty big game there for UC Davis, man. And UC Davis hung with Washington. They were winning this game in the second half and then started to falter, but they didn't go away, and they put in another effort to make a late run to try to come back again in this game. So full effort from UC Davis as a big 15.5-point underdog on the road against a Big Ten team. It's going to be tough to, I think, get back up off the mat again after that and play a lesser opponent after that, man, and go into what I think is probably kind of an unfamiliar environment, even though this also was. But I doubt UC Davis plays at Idaho very often. And coming off a huge game like this, I think UC Davis could be in for the hangover spot. Like I said, this is a max effort here, a massive effort game here. And UC Davis, I mean, they did get outshot, so like statistically it wasn't that crazy. Although Washington did actually only shoot 14.3% from 3, although they outshot them from the floor overall. But that's a kind of an outlier of a low 3-point percentage from Washington there too. So maybe UC Davis, because of that, looked a little bit better than they are otherwise. But the game was fairly close, closer than you would expect it to be. And I think a lot of it probably just because Washington thought they could just show up and win the game probably. Because when these bigger conference teams play these lower tier teams here, they a lot of times tend to not show up totally focused. And on Idaho's side, I think they're in a better spot here because they're not traveling. They're staying at home, and they're coming off a win. So they have one game under their belt already, and it was a nice, easy win, kind of like a tune-up type of game over Northwest University. I don't know who the hell that is. Not Northwestern, but Northwest, I guess, must be some Division II school or something up in the Northwest of the United States. I don't know who they are, but easy game for Idaho, but a nice tune-up game. So I think that will, like, give them a little bit of momentum. This is going to be at least their Division I home opener at the very least. And I know they have a big game up next against Washington State. True. And I know that UC Davis does not have a bigger game up next, but still, UC Davis coming off that ridiculous close game against Washington there. Huge game. And Idaho, I think they're still going to be focused on this game because it is their Division I home opener. So I don't really think they're going to be caught in a look ahead or anything like that. And they most likely saw what UC Davis just did against Washington. So those are the two plays in college basketball. We'll move over to hockey. I'll talk about a couple of games. I'm going to try to get this done quick. And that means the show's front-loaded with all my plays as well. Hockey, there wasn't a whole lot that I was looking at. I will point out that Florida and Dallas are both returning from the games in Finland, where they played 2 games in Finland almost a week ago now at this point. And Florida won both of them, which I think were on Friday, Saturday, maybe. And so they've had a lot of time off, but they're traveling back from Finland, of course. So I don't know what to really gather from that spot. I can tell you Nashville does have 63% of the cash, whereas 85% of the tickets are on the other side on Florida. So it looks like the cash discrepancy is on Nashville. And maybe Nashville is being a little bit overlooked right now because of their slow start to the season. But this Nashville team is not as bad as they look at the very least. So the Florida's still the better team and up from -185 to -193. Dallas is playing Chicago, who's in a back-to-back, which I went against Chicago last night. Dallas, massive favorite, but down from minus 380 to minus 344, and very public. 92% of the tickets, 90% of the cash. I'm not going to get involved in either of those games. I'm just pointing out, just remember that Dallas and Florida both returning from Finland. I was looking at maybe Utah would be a way I would lean in hockey at the very least. With St. Louis, I think is in a bad spot. They're down from minus 110 to minus 107. Looks like tickets evenly split 50-50 in Utah with 88% of the cash. I think the spot for St. Louis isn't that great. They're coming off a big win, or two big wins actually, against Toronto and Tampa Bay. Two pretty big wins there, man, and they're just kind of staying at home. And after a couple wins like that, maybe they're kind of basking in it. And it looks like Binnington has kind of been in net a few games in a row, and maybe this is a spot where he's not going to start, and Hoffer will be back in there. And we saw what happened the last time he was in net. They lost 8-1. So he is obviously the less talented of their two goalies. So it might be Hoffer in net for St. Louis here as well, which isn't that great. And look up next, they have Washington, who's been off to a pretty good start this season, looking like one of the better teams in the NHL, really, which is crazy. Washington sitting at 9-3 on the season. So it is possible St. Louis overlooks this Utah team who hasn't really been playing as well as of late, and they're down to a 500 record. After a hot start, they've really not been as good since. But Utah's also coming off a pretty difficult game against Winnipeg, even though I know they got shot out. Yeah, they got their tires shot out. Now, they got shut out. But they're also coming off another big game at Vegas where they played them into overtime. So I think they probably just kind of ran out of steam there. But they are playing a third straight road game here. So it doesn't look like the easiest spot to me for Utah either necessarily. But I would still lean that way against what St. Louis has been doing. But I don't really want to play Utah off of a big game as well. I would say potentially you could look to the over in this one, but the market looks against it from going down from 6 juice to the over to 6 juice to the under. 80% of the tickets on the over and 52% of the cash on the under. So I'm just going to stay away. And I'll point out also I lean against New Jersey as well. New Jersey's up from minus 273 to minus 300. 92% of the tickets, 99% of the cash. I would look to maybe take a puck line on Montreal here. You can get like plus 1.5 goals at probably around like plus 100 or maybe like minus 102 or something like that. So you can basically like turn it into a spread bet essentially, maybe sprinkle a little bit on the money line if you do agree with that one and want to play a very anti-public, at the very least, Montreal team. I think New Jersey is in a pretty bad spot. They're in a letdown spot because they just beat Edmonton, but not only that, but they're returning home from a road trip that took them out to the Pacific Northwest. They do have an extra day off, but that extra day might also kind of hurt their momentum a little bit, and they have a Montreal team that's really been struggling coming in. So is this New Jersey team really going to throw their full focus at them? Even though New Jersey will have Markstrom back in net, who is their primary goaltender. I assume he will be back, but I don't think it matters that much. New Jersey's goaltending tandem is not that great, so it is possible Montreal is going to be able to score something in this game. And New Jersey, like I said, they're coming off a huge win over the Western Conference champs from last year on the road and returning home from a road trip, which is a typically distracted spot, even though it wasn't a long road trip. It was a road trip where they shut out Vancouver and Edmonton, man. So probably a pretty successful road trip as far as they're concerned. And now they might be in that distracted spot because they have to return home all the way across the country and get back to home life and get stuff done at home. And they have an extra day off in there, which might disrupt their momentum. And they do have a somewhat better opponent, the Islanders, up next, or at least an okay team, whereas Montreal's really been struggling, like I said, and looking like one of the lower tier teams yet again. Montreal's coming off an overtime game at home against Calgary where they lost, but they're on a loss streak, so they don't have very good momentum right now, but getting out of home might be a good thing for them. They get to just get out of there and go on the road, and their travel spot is actually a little bit better, even though they only have one day off. They're kind of just staying in the Eastern time zone at the very least, and getting out of home when you're not playing well, going out on the road and starting a road trip, that's going to tend to be a more focused spot. And it does look like, based on starting goalies there on I always forget the name of the website, Daily Faceoff or whatever. It does look like Montembeault is going to be in net again for Montreal, who's basically their primary goaltender. Not that he's that great, but it looks like he is going to play for a third straight game. At least he's slated to right now. So Take from that what you will, but I lean to the Montreal side. The game I'm actually going to play, I'm going to the NHL totals, man, because my read on these totals, like being able to identify overs in spots where I think two teams are just going to be really gassed and not be able to play a lot of defense. And I've only played one of them so far, and it won, but it seems like every time I identify and I'm like, I lean to the over here, it winds up winning. So I am going to play an over in this one, and it's going to be Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, over 6 at -105, although I think it looks like the line's already moving on this one in my direction. It looks like it's flipped from 6 juice to the under up to 6 juice to the over now. So you may be able to just get the over 6 at -110 right now. It looks like it's a slightly public over at 75% of the tickets, but it's not like the public is really coming in and playing random NHL totals in games with Philadelphia playing. But, well, maybe they will because they like Tampa Bay's ability to score, but 80% of the cash is also coming in on the over here. It looks like the line is moving towards the over. I obviously agree with it, and I will tell you the reasons why before I switch over to the rest of these sports. Tampa Bay, I think both teams are in a bad spot, dude. I mean, it comes down to that. And when both teams are in a bad spot, you want to look for the defense to maybe struggle a bit. Tampa Bay is returning home from a road trip, only 1 day off. Not a successful road trip, but they're playing a very weak Philadelphia team, and they have a big game against Winnipeg up next. Although, granted, they actually have almost a week off after this, which is kind of weird to see in the middle of a hockey season. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if there's a scheduled NHL break or what that is, but Tampa might not be totally focused on this game, and returning home from a road trip that took them all the way up to, well, it took them into elevation in Colorado and then up to Winnipeg. So they went pretty far, and now they're returning home with 1 day off. Again, when you return home, it's going to be that kind of return home distraction type of spot. And I think when bad spots come up like this, it affects the defense more than the ability to score. Like the defense can maybe be affected by the tiredness a little bit more and the lack of focus a little bit more, and you see actually more goals get scored because the offense requires that a little bit less because you just have to kind of skate around and score. It will be Vasilevsky in net again, as Johansson played a couple days ago, so Vasilevsky will be in there, but I don't mind that. I'll talk about the goaltender situation quickly in a second, but Tampa, they're in a bad spot for all those reasons, and it may be a look ahead to Winnipeg, even though that game isn't for a while. Winnipeg is looking like the best team in hockey right now, which is wild. Philadelphia certainly has not been the best team in hockey. They're coming off a couple of losses, but they played Carolina pretty tough here, man. A couple of tough games. That was only 2 days ago, and they got Tampa here, which it is a game that they would normally step up for, but man, I mean, this is a tough run of games here. And with Florida, the returning champs up next, that's kind of a big game too. So I don't necessarily want to say they're going to overlook Tampa, but man, this is a tough run of games here. Carolina, tough physical team, coming off that game and playing them close. Doesn't look like the best spot to me. And this is a game, this was tied. Look at this game, man. Philadelphia was tied with Carolina into the final minute of the third period when they gave up the game-winning goal, and then the last one was an empty net right after that. So Philadelphia had chances to win that game as a huge -300 dog, or the Hurricanes are a -300 favorite, I should say, against, Philadelphia almost was able to pull off a huge upset against Carolina. So coming off that, I don't think they're in the greatest spot either. It's going to be Urson in net most likely, as Kolosov played the last couple. So he's in the mix now with this goaltender situation that Philadelphia cannot really figure out. None of their goalies are very good. And I will point out that if this is Urson against Vasilevsky, which it looks like that's what it's slated to be in this game, I know Vasilevsky is a very good goaltender, but Urson versus Vasilevsky, that matchup happened 3 times last year, and every one of those games went over. And Urson, in the last one of those 3, he had a good game in one of them, but in one of the other ones, he was only in the game for 10 minutes and allowed 4 goals. So take from that what you will. But that goaltending matchup last year was 3-0 to the over. So I like the over in this one, and that's what I'm doing. Zach, what's up, man? Good NFL games this week. Yeah, I haven't looked at the NFL slate a whole lot. Tonight's game should be good. I'm not playing the game tonight. I'll talk about it now. Or actually, I'll talk about it after I talk about college football. Oh, actually, I have to talk about NBA too. God. Yeah, but NBA is a small slate here. But yeah, you're right. NFL, we'll see. Johnny, yeah, you guys are all degenerate gamblers, man. I don't know if it's something to brag about, but I'm bragging about my 3-0 day yesterday at the very least. But NFL, I will have my usual NFL video. I usually put that out Saturday night. Friday night, I'll talk about college football. I'm considering maybe doing a college basketball show Friday night as well, even though that's going to be a lot to do both of those shows. But we'll see what I want to do with that. Although basketball is not in full, it's in full swing, but these like earlier basketball games tend to be just kind of weird and not as interesting. It gets way crazier when we get into conference play. Yeah, obviously obey all laws. Gambling is fun, yes. NBA, I'm only going to talk about one game real quick here, which is Milwaukee, Utah. I'm not playing this, but I think the best lean that I see in the NBA, which not something I'm going to do, but I would lean against the Bucks with this huge number that they're laying here. And they're coming off a couple of difficult games where they played Cleveland really close. Cleveland, I think, is still undefeated. Milwaukee played them really close both times. Probably should have won the game I bet them on Saturday. Bet them in on Saturday. And then Giannis was out for this last game. It looks like he is coming back in this game. So that was an injured player theory spot for Washington, where without Giannis, I think they stepped it up in lieu of him being in there because they played Cleveland close again on the road as an underdog. And then now if Giannis is coming back in this game, and it looks like Chris Middleton is actually slated to come back in tomorrow's game. So you might have dual reverse injured player spots now where Milwaukee has to work that guy back. But with Giannis only having missed one game, I don't think it's going to be that much of a difficulty getting him back into the lineup. Middleton maybe, but Milwaukee has this game against a really bad-looking Utah team sandwiched in between some max effort games against Cleveland and with New York, the Knicks up tomorrow, and then Boston up after that. So this Utah, it is a sandwich spot. I mean, Utah's just sitting in here between all these bigger opponents. The only issue I have with fading Milwaukee here is that they kind of desperately need a win, so they may still want to show up here, and they do have 2 days off, which might help break their losing momentum here. But you're also looking at a situation where both teams are 1-6, but the odds makers are telling you who the better team is, which is obviously Milwaukee. And Milwaukee's a 9-point favorite, and it's moved up a little bit on them. I don't see the percentages yet, but the odds makers are obviously telling you Milwaukee is the better team, although I think everybody does know that. So Milwaukee still is probably going to wind up being the public team, but it's just hilarious that both of these are one-win teams right now. Just ugly, ugly records. So don't quite want to do it, but it does look like a bad spot for Milwaukee with much bigger games surrounding this game. And as far as Utah, I think this may be a momentum carrying spot because they're in the middle of a road trip and they finally won a game. They beat Chicago. They finally got that monkey off their back. They got to win, baby, Utah. And now they're continuing the road trip. They have a couple of days off too, but they'll probably be focused against a Milwaukee team that they know has Giannis and, it's Milwaukee. They're always in the playoffs and whatever, and Lillard there. So Utah probably will show up. It's just a matter of how Milwaukee's going to react to the spot that they're in. And will Milwaukee actually completely show up for this game? I don't know. So I do lean to taking the points with Utah in that one. It looks like a better spot for them, but it's not one that's going to make my card. Gambling is dumb. Yeah, the Lady Boys are in the Philippines and in Thailand, man. Gambling, I don't know if it's a scam, but yeah, Russian roulette. Yeah, that's the most extreme form of gambling. College football, we have 2 games up here. Let me see if I can get this done as quickly as I can. I don't have any plays left, by the way, but I am going to talk about all these football games quickly. FAU and East Carolina is the first game on the board. They're both starting at the same time, so we have more, what is this? This is American Athletic, and then the other game is Sun Belt, I think. East Carolina is sitting at 7.5 with 54% of the cash, 58% of the tickets on the other side on FAU. So FAU somehow getting a little bit more of the public action. I don't understand why, because I think East Carolina is clearly the better team. It's just maybe a matter of that East Carolina's looked pretty ugly as well. So this number does look a little bit big maybe to the public's eye, but I would lean to the East Carolina side. The total's up from 56 to 57.5. 75% of the tickets. Looks like 100% of the cash on the over. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not even sure that I would lean to the over here because both of these offenses kind of have problems, man. And this comes down to East Carolina being the better defensive team, in my opinion, for me. But FAU was just kind of a mess overall, dude. And Fancher, I know he had a nice game against South Florida. They still got blown out in that game. There must have been a lot of turnovers in this game, I'm guessing. I don't know, but no, I guess not. It's just both teams put up a ton of offense. So this FAU team, I mean, they're not really that good on either side of the ball, really. They're probably better offensively than defensively, but man, I mean, this doesn't look great, and they're They also are at a rest disadvantage here because they last played on Friday. They have a short week basically here going into East Carolina. They probably know they're pretty much they're not going to even get a bowl at this point, FAU. They're going to have to win out to make a bowl, which it's not going to happen. And I think they probably know that at this point, although maybe they'll still show up for this. But East Carolina, I think, is at least a little bit undervalued right now. Because, I mean, they did play Army. That was one of their losses. Liberty, not really an easy team to face either. App State, Old Dominion. They actually beat Old Dominion on the road. So East Carolina, I think, has played a little bit of a more difficult schedule than FAU has. Even though FAU did play Michigan State in there really early on. But East Carolina, I think, is a little bit better. And they're coming out of a bye. Even though they went into that bye beating Temple, I don't think they're going to care about beating Temple that much. They did have a quarterback change, it looks like, from Garcia to Hauser. It's probably going to be Hauser in this one. I don't know if that matters that much, really. But East Carolina, actually, they can run the ball a little bit, and their defense is better. So I do like East Carolina better. But when you're laying a lot of points with a defensive team, maybe it's not as great a play. But I do still lean that way as far as how to play this game. And they do have the rest advantage. Like I said, they're coming out of a bye. And East Carolina, they need 2 more wins to become bowl eligible. So I think they're probably focused on, like, we do want to get into a bowl here at the very least. So it's going to start by trying to win this game. And then they probably know that these last games they have are difficult, man, at North Texas and Navy. So they're probably going to have to win these next 2 games to get the bowl eligibility, because I don't think they're going to be able to win these last 2 games. So that might focus them a little bit as well. So that's the way I look in that one. And then App State, Coastal Carolina, maybe the better of these 2 games. App State has flipped from a 1-point dog to, well, pick 'em minus 120. So basically they're kind of teetering on like being a 1-point favorite here. 74% of the tickets, 75% of the cash on App State. So it looks like they're public, but the line is also moving towards them. Total down from 63 to 62.5. 61% of tickets, but 98% of the cash on the over, though, despite that little bit of a drop. This is a pretty high total. So I think that the odds makers are kind of indicating something to you here. And I think the over might be worth a look in this game, because I think both of these teams kind of struggle defensively. I would lean to the App State side as well, but I think the over may be better in this one. App State has faced a somewhat difficult schedule. And both of these teams actually haven't faced the easiest schedule, but App State, I think they had a wrench thrown into their season, man, with this hurricane cancellation. The hurricane came through their town in Boone, North Carolina. They had to cancel a game against Liberty, and they didn't play for almost a month. And then when they were dealing with that and came out of that, like right after the hurricane, they had to go play Marshall, and I just think they were not focused because of all the hurricane stuff. And then they had to go on the road with basically only having played that 1 game in a month span. They had to go out and play Louisiana, who's been maybe the best team in the Sun Belt and has the best quarterback in the conference. Not easy to do, and they played fairly decently against them. And then they were able to win their last 2 games, and a win over Old Dominion is a pretty good win. But now the question is, are they actually in a sandwich spot? Because they have to go to Coastal Carolina, who hasn't been playing as well lately, and they do have James Madison and then Georgia Southern up next, who are 2 better teams in this conference. But on the other hand, App State, they're looking for 2 more wins to try to become bowl eligible, which is, it looks unlikely at this point, but it's not impossible. But they did get screwed by not being able to play that game against Liberty, man. So I don't know if they wind up as a 5-6 team, if they'll be able to petition to get in a bowl. I don't know. So I could see this. I could see arguments for a couple of different scenarios here. This could maybe be a sandwich spot, but it could also be a spot where App State is going to come focused because they're still maybe trying to fight for bowl eligibility here. And this is at least a winnable game for them. App State, they're still rolling with Aguiar, who's been their quarterback all season, basically. They're finally getting something going. In this game, both teams have short weeks. They both played on Saturday. So they're both on short weeks, which is another reason why I like the over here, because you have 2 teams who are familiar with each other, so they're not really going to be feeling each other out. They're both in the same conference, so the offenses might just come out swinging right away, and the defenses might be at a disadvantage because it's a short week for both teams, and neither defense is even that good anyway. So both of these defenses have been struggling quite a bit this season. So I think both offenses might be able to do something here. And you can see App State's been able to run the ball pretty nicely the last couple of games. So their offense has been working decently the last few games. And Old Dominion's a pretty good defensive team, so putting up 28 against them doesn't look too bad. Coastal Carolina, their defense is very weak in my opinion as well. Their offense not bad, although Vasco kind of was struggling. I don't know if he got hurt or if they actually switched to Kim, but then Vasco was back in there last week. So I don't know. It will be Vasco again, I assume, in this one. And this Coastal Carolina offense has at least shown like glimpses of being a pretty capable offense, but they're also trending kind of in the wrong direction, even though I know James Madison is not an easy team to beat, and neither is Louisiana. They actually lost to Louisiana by the same score that App State did, it looks like. This last game is kind of an embarrassing loss, though, against Troy. So Coastal Carolina might be in a bounce-back spot after that. Troy has a pathetic offense this year and allowing 38 to them. I mean, that's not good, but it also indicates to me that Coastal's defense has not been good, man. Coastal, I mean, they're struggling right now, man. So App State looks like the momentum is in their favor as far as the side, so that's why I lean to their side a little bit in this game. Coastal kind of plummeting a little bit, but again, I think the situation that both defenses are in, where they're not good to begin with, and they don't have a whole lot of rest here, and both offenses do at least have the ability to do damage. I think the over is what makes more sense in that one. And I don't know if Coastal would be in a bounce back spot off of kind of an ugly loss there to Troy. Who knows? But that's the way I look at those. And then NFL to close this out. We actually have a decent NFL Thursday game here. Bengals-Ravens. This should be a pretty good game, man. Ravens sitting at a 6-point favorite, 54% of tickets, 70% of the cash on them. I have to pick this game in pick'em pools. I'm not betting this game, but I think it's a tough pick as far as the side. The total's up from 49.5 to 53.5 with juice to the under, but 67% of tickets and 81% of cash on the over. So if you like the over, you've kind of missed the boat on this, but I do agree with the over in this one, probably more so than the side. I mean, the odds makers kind of telling you something here with a total that's this high, because usually you think, oh, AFC North, this is going to be one of these big, like, slugfest defensive matchups. No, that's not really the case this year, man. This Cincinnati team, it's, this Joe Burrow-led offense. It's been a really good offense this year. Their defense has not been good whatsoever. So you're looking at a pretty bad Bengals defense, a Bengals offense that's definitely good, and you're looking at a Ravens defense that hasn't been as good as it was last year under McDonald at the very least. They're an okay defense. I would say a good defense, but not spectacular. And the Ravens offense has basically been the best in the NFL. And again, this is a situation where these teams are familiar with each other. So I think that you could see these teams it could turn into a shootout. You could see these teams just right out of the gate, just doing stuff, trying to like shock the opponent and whatever, because they're not going to have a feeling out process here. And they've already played each other once. Although I know that game was very high scoring as well, with the Ravens winning 41-38, I think, in a game that I lost on the Bengals in that game, which the Bengals should have won that game, and they're winning most of the game, and they blew it with a bad Burrow interception in Ravens territory when they were trying to extend the lead, and they wound up completely losing it and losing in overtime. Brutal way to lose that game as a Bengals plus 2.5 underdog play there. That was difficult. But even though that game went over, I don't think it necessarily means this game isn't going to also be a shootout here. I would lean to it actually being that way because of everything I just said. And it's a short week for both teams. So you can see both defenses maybe struggle a little bit in this one. As far as the side, I mean, Cincinnati, they've started playing better, man. They had a really rough start to the season with some holdouts and stuff. And I will point out, T. Higgins is going to still be out in this game, I think. So Higgins is still out. He's been out, I think, since week 7. But, I mean, Cincinnati's offense did fine last week, but it was against Las Vegas, the Raiders, who really aren't good. But even so, the Higgins injury I don't think matters that much. This offense is still clicking, and Joe Burrow's still leading the offense. The rushing attack is a little bit questionable, even though Brown had a nice game last week again against the pretty bad Raiders. But other than that, their rushing attack hasn't been very good. So it does all go through Burrow, but the Higgins injury I don't think is that massive. Obviously, Cincinnati's going to step up for this game at Baltimore. And Cincinnati, with Joe Burrow, like these recent games that Cincinnati's played at Baltimore, Cincinnati's been pretty good. And I don't remember what the number actually is, but they've covered a majority of the games as an underdog at Baltimore. So even though Baltimore, it does look like the market seems to be indicating on the Baltimore side right now with the cash discrepancy, I would maybe start leaning the other way as far as the side and maybe be looking to Cincinnati, even though I know Baltimore also knows that they almost lost at Cincinnati. But still, I think this game means a little bit more to Cincinnati because they need wins kind of desperately still as they're trying to claw their way back to 500. Baltimore did at least beat them once already, even though they know it was a close game. Baltimore, they're behind Pittsburgh right now, and Pittsburgh is who they have up next. So it is possible Baltimore is actually even looking ahead a little bit, and they're coming off a nice blowout win there. But I'm not saying Baltimore is going to be totally unfocused, but as far as the situation and like how these teams have played in recent history, I do think Cincinnati plus the points might be the lean on the side. But again, I think the over is the better look in this game than the side, which I think the side is difficult in this one. And I think that might be it as far as that's concerned. I guess this kind of puts Cincinnati in a road reversal revenge spot, by the way, though, which is when a team lost at home in the first divisional matchup and now they're a road underdog in the second matchup. They tend to be worth a look as well, but maybe not in this case because Baltimore probably knows that they almost lost that game at Cincinnati. If Baltimore had a much easier win in that game, I think Cincinnati would be a much stronger look in this game. So because Cincinnati did play them tough, maybe it's not quite the best look, but that's what I think about these games. I don't know if there's anything else I was going to point out in that game, but I think that is it. Yeah, and I'll be back with other shows, man. Obviously, I'm here every morning, and I'll be back Saturday or Friday night to talk about college football, Saturday night to talk about NFL, and maybe Friday night to talk about college basketball. Haven't decided if I'm going to do that yet, but I may wind up with some college basketball plays. One more time, my plays tonight are in college basketball. Charleston Southern +7. There might be 7.5s out there, and I got to go grab one of those numbers. Idaho +4. And in hockey, Philadelphia, Tampa over 6, which I got at -105. That line looks like it's moving up pretty quickly. That's going to do it for me. Thanks, guys, for hanging out in the chat. As always, I'm Tower Gang Toad. You can follow me on Twitter. Go check out the Tower Gang podcast. We had a fun episode last night. Basically a normal episode with the boys, even though Clint was sleepy. Clint said that he wasn't even going to be able to make it for the show. He made it for the whole show, and I think he was still there for the after party, too. Sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/TowerGang. You get to see the after show, the pre-show. You get extra content from us. We played bonus Laney edit footage in the after show, which we might still show on the mainline episode as well. And we may post the Laney edit as well, but I know you like to see our reactions to it as well. So go check out the Tower Game podcast, man. The most offensive podcast on the planet. And that's going to do it for me. Tower Gang Toad. Let's have a good night. Let's win, man. I don't expect a repeat 3-0 performance of last night, but let's at least get wins here. Have a good one. Peace out.